Datura stramonium, otherwise known as thornapple or devil's snare, is a common invasive species originating from Central America. It's a flowering plant from the deadly nightshade family, and the plant is both famous and infamous for two of its most captivating qualities. It's famous for its beautiful trumpet flower, and as a result, it was a common houseplant in the Victorian age, but it was also infamous for its psychoactive properties. There are many tales of Victorian ladies sitting around a tea kettle and knocking some of the Datura plant's pollen into the tea with the intentions of having a pretty fun afternoon. And for as silly as that sounds, if only those women knew how much danger they were putting themselves in. Datura isn't something to mess around with. The pollen, the flower, the seeds are all toxic and incredibly psychoactive. One seed is enough to give you psychosis, and if you make the grim decision to eat multiple seeds in one sitting, you will die. And with that being said, this video will cover 3 stories of individuals who chose to try the devil's snare. And all of the stories are sourced from Ailurus.com, a site dedicated to trip reports and drug harm reduction. And if you're interested in reading more Datura trip reports, the link to Ailurus.com and the stories that you're hearing today can be found in the description box down below. Our first story comes from Timmy. It was posted January 10th, 2004. In high school, I had a friend who had been reading Carlos Castenda. Carlos wrote about this Yaqui shaman named Don Juan Matisse who would access the spirit world by ingesting peyote, datura, etc. So he, inspired by Don Juan, went to one of his expeditions to find herbs and came back with a Tupperware full of spiny pods. It would be a huge understatement to say that we were unprepared for the extent of the experience. I ate a heaping teaspoon of fresh, mature seeds. My friends Lucy and Pollo had eaten a similar amount. 90% of this was told to me by my best friend Doogie, who bore witness to my descent into madness. Basically, what I remember is eating the seeds around midnight with Lucy and Pollo. It was kind of like being really drunk, except for the total lack of equilibrium, serious dryness, and soreness of the mouth and throat, and some lucid hallucinations. It didn't feel enjoyable, just uncomfortable really. I kept smoking cigarettes that would just disappear, and I talked to a friend of mine from day camp who I hadn't seen in maybe 7 years. I then vaguely remembered finding my upstairs toilet had been puked on, not in, with $1 floating on top. I also vaguely remembered cleaning it up, washing the dollar bill off, and hanging it to dry. I really wasn't sure if this had happened, and when I went to check on the dollar, it was gone and the toilet was a little too clean. Later, Lucy said she vaguely remembered puking in my bathroom, but we're still not sure if it was real or not, and the dollar is still missing. Pollo, Lucy, and I all got extremely fatigued and sleepy, and we all went to bed. I had a dream where I kept walking into a wall. I was then woken up the next morning by my phone ringing. Lucy and Pollo were gone. I picked up the phone, and this was the conversation. Tim, are you okay? Fine. What's wrong? What's my name? Tell me my name. Screw you. Stop messing with me. I'm not. What do you remember from last night? I'm not listening to this. Just do me a favor and look on top of the fridge. You put my dog's food dish on top of the fridge? Good one, cockhead. No, asshole. You did. Whatever. Goodbye. I'm coming over. I go upstairs where my mom's house is in total disarray. I find the wall-mounted phone hanging off the hook, the front door standing wide open, entryway overturned, a broken vase on the floor, and it was Halloween, so we filled the dish with candy corn. Someone went through like 75 pieces of candy corn and bit off only the orange half. I begin to freak out. I had really thought that Doogie was just joshing me, but he never took jokes that far. So Dave came over and he helped me clean up. I found all of the pieces of the vase. They were broken where they lay, except for a very large section that was hidden behind the curtain on the other side of the room. Strange. After we had cleaned things up, Doogie proceeded to tell me what happened. He had come back over to my house maybe an hour after I had gone to bed. Apparently, he found me wearing only my boxers, frantically trying to locate something in my kitchen. Things had not been broken yet. He said my name, but I paid no attention. Only continued to open and slam drawers and cabinets. Hey, Tim! I turned around, looking at him with annoyance. What? What are you doing? I'm looking for my Windows 95 disk. Apparently, I said this with an expression and tone of voice of someone who had just been asked what his penis was for. Quickly after that, I rolled my eyes and walked off toward my dinner table, stopping for a moment to hock a loogie on the wall. It's safe to say that Doogie was very confused at this point, and then I started talking to the table. "Don't fucking leave." "I'm not," said Doogie. "Not you, the candlesticks." "What? Tim, what the hell is wrong with you? Who are you?" "I'm your best friend. Try to remember." John? No. Jake? No. You don't even know anybody named Jake." I'm Doogie." "Oh yeah, Doogie." I spit another substantial hocker onto the wallpaper. "Tim, this is your house. Have some respect. Stop spitting on the walls." I reply, "Okay." So I just spit onto the floor instead. Quickly after that, I grab a spoon off the table and seem to try to smoke it. I make as if I'm lighting it with an invisible lighter and take a deep breath. And then I offer David the spoon. "No thanks." He just takes the spoon away from me. I walked away and grabbed my dog's food bowl and went downstairs, down by the fridge where I carefully placed the dish on top. "She doesn't need it. I don't like her anyway," I said, either anticipating his question or maybe just talking to myself. I opened the fridge and began to dig into the pockets of my boxers, except they didn't have pockets. At this moment, I begin to speak again. "I'm so thirsty. I don't think I have any change." I look at Doogie. "Yeah, you don't need change. This is your house. That's your soda." "Okay." "Do you have 50 cents? "Sure." He reaches and pulls out a brisk iced tea and opens it for me. I take a single sip, set it down, pull out a fresh can, open it, take a single sip, set it down, reach for another, and then Doogie stops me. "You have lost your mind. You realize." Immediately after that, I begin to cackle maniacally and then spit out the soda. I walk towards my bedroom, missing the doorway and walking squarely into the wall. David helps me. Apparently, Pollo and Lucy had already left. Doogie then asks me where did Lucy go, and I respond, "She went to see the shadow people." Not long after this, I think Doogie managed to get me into bed and go to sleep. Then he went home. It was a school night. I'm not sure if I got back up and did those things upstairs, or if Pollo and Lucy came back and did them. I guess I'll never know for certain. Lucy woke up in her bed, legs and feet muddy and scraped with no recollection of how she got there. Pollo woke home at home too, and those people didn't drive. They didn't live close to me either. Odd. I'm probably forgetting parts. I've heard Doogie tell this story so many times, but I'm pretty sure I did the other stuff too. The story gained something of a legendary status at my high school, so there's that. Our second story comes from Word. My experience with Datura was synced with my expanding awareness. It marks a gateway from the world I was reared in and the world that I now walk in. It was autumn, and I was 20 when I consumed the seeds of the withered Jimson weed plant in a random field of shale in the foothills of Appalachia. I had been wandering for months already, and after leaving my anthropology studies in college in search of something real, my life to that point seemed to be a cycle of rearing, then disillusionment, and then I had reached a weary state. After turning my back on my faith at 15, my belief in history's interpretations and philosophies at 17, my worldview and lifestyle with its effects at 19, and even my ability to conceive at 20, I felt naked and alone in a very cold world. I was living as a vagrant and wandered away, only away, from all that was familiar. It seemed all ill. I had been fasting and having dreams with meaning that led me to asceticism, and I had lived as a vegan for some time. I felt like I had been infected by original sin, even if that something is so abstract that it couldn't be rationalized. I was ready to die, but I didn't have the volition to push myself that far. The dreams showed me glimpses of something that I felt closer to in the wilderness. When my friend from childhood told me that he had spoken to animals while under the influence of Datura, I needed no more motivation. I could feel as if it was an order immediately. I wish I had the proper venue to explain more, as I feel that sharing would be correct. I consumed the seeds out of 2 withered seed pods, which would amount to a heaping teaspoon, and about 4 hours later, the experience began. The onset involved losing touch with material reality. Things appeared, disappeared, and seemed in between constantly. I didn't have any concern, though. I was a totally detached observer. Then, I lost touch of my body. My legs wobbled. My arms went farther or not as far as I seemed to wield them. I felt like I was swaying when I was not. This was still not a concern for me. Then a great many visitors came and spoke to me. It seemed as though people I have known throughout my past were coming back and reminding me of lessons I learned. Mystical creatures, holy men, teachers, fictitious characters, even TV personalities, past masters. It all reminded me of insights that I gained from them. This lasted for hours, and I recall at the end of this, they might just stand beside me silently, and I could see a light behind them and simply knew what they meant. Then an overpowering urge to urinate carried me to the toilet. I emptied a chalky white stream into the bowl, sighed heavily, and all of a sudden my mind was clear. I didn't know what was happening. This is when I entered what I call a dream state. I opened the door to the restroom, and on the other side, it was vacant. I recall feeling as if a woman were embracing me, and I fell into her cloak. I caught a glimpse of her face and amulet just before falling. She was earthy and old. This is when things became too abstract to recount, and I recall feeling as if I would fall in whichever direction I struggled against. So I exerted myself and just decided to give up and just fall. It was after a period of intense fear and struggle at the prospect of falling that I realized I was floating. And the more I let go, the more I was cradled. There was a period after that I won't explain because I feel I only understand it. One I could explain next was the feeling of the moonlight, like a shower of cool warmth. I set out and roamed the hills, abandoning my keys, wallet, and shoes along the way. They felt so heavy, I recall. I recall speaking and using a vibrational voice to the plants of all kinds. They would make me feel their presence in life's web and taught me about mine. It was like visiting a place I'd never seen and knowing everyone already. It was beyond description. I felt at peace. I recall resting under the moon and then noticing a tick on me, then 2, then 5, and I couldn't swipe them off. They crawled furiously toward my head, and at first I accepted it, as I had accepted falling, but as I began to think about the situation, it brought dread to my mind. By then, these ticks and other crawling bugs were crawling into my nose, ears, mouth, eyes, every orifice. The more I decided to panic, the more I did, and I could feel my airways being choked. Then, as if the feminine character with the cloak was whispering to me, I let go again and accepted death. At that very moment, every crawling thing that was choking me was transformed into a ladybug, and in a wisp of red in the moonlight, they all flitted away. I was quiet again. Then, approaching from a distance, a dance by a feline-like feminine figure. It was incredible, and I was deeply moved, acrobatic yet smooth and flowing. I was entranced. Then I realized she was a shadow. I realized that shadows all around me had begun to dance, so I joined them. There was visual music, and all around the shadows danced. They taught me to dance like them, and I felt so graceful that I cannot explain. There is another mysterious period here, a blur of abstract events. I then spoke to a dog for some time. Strange as it may sound, at first he was an old farmer, leaning against a truck. He would nod as I told him things, mostly deep thoughts of goodness and seeing him well, which didn't seem strange at all. Then, gradually, he responded more and more by turning his head and barking, an old bloodhound type of bark. This seemed too normal. Then his guise was more canine. He told me of his life and how he longed to feel wild again before he passed, and he was very old. He conveyed to me that I would do well to embrace a mystery within all things, even my own being. I understood then, but later, when sobered, had to meditate long to reach this again. I bid him adieu and wandered further. There's another phase now, which is a mixture of seeing things in stages of decay. It's very difficult to convey, but amounts to the fact that all is perpetually thriving and decaying, always. The next I recall, I was talking to a man in his house, which I had wandered into. Later he told me that I woke him up by entering, and he asked what the fuck I was doing there, and to get out. My response was an expression of innocence recoiling from brutality. He said I examined everything in the room closely. At the time, I recall seeing them as relics, and then sitting on his sofa and talking to him. Being well experienced with psychedelic experiences himself, he relaxed and tried to get information about me. I recall him asking where I was from, and this is the normal process to begin to return. I could tell him what state and city I was from, but he specifically wanted to know why I was in his house and how I got there. I responded that I used my car. He asked what car, and I pointed to his. It really looked like the car I once owned at the time. Later, he heard me muttering to myself about the things that seemed to remind him of a book that he was reading concerning the Akashic Record, which I'm still not familiar with. Eventually, I felt I could walk back to my starting point. I then recall seeing the cloaked woman once more upon returning to my friend's home, but on a second glimpse seeing it, it was just a heap of trash bags. This experience lasted 3 days, an utter time warp. I later found out that neighbors had seen me wandering in horse pastures, seeming to play like a small child might. I was mud encrusted up to my knees and dirty all over, just wearing pants. I still have the impact of these events with me today. I know how to let go. I know how to let life flow through me. My life has greatly enriched. I feel being disillusioned and ready to die was what kept me afloat during this experience. Would I have choked to death if I hadn't? The feminine aspect of all things has become a most fascinating and revered part of my life. The mystery has returned. I may never use Datura again. I don't hear the voice, as you can see. It is among most of the risky trips I've ever encountered. After studying its traditional use, it is quite clear why that time was right. Yet, I will never suggest someone use it the way I did. Datura is beyond psychedelic. Our final story comes from user Chimpanzee. Ever since I heard of Datura from a friend at school a few years ago, I've always tried to get a hold of some, asking dealers I knew around town, but I was never successful, as many people I asked didn't even know what it was. So after a while I gave up hope and continued with the usual, smoking grass every day, occasionally scoring some ketamine or opium to make my life a little bit more interesting. Then last year I finally got the chance to try the stuff. One of my friends told me he had gone to stay with his grandparents for a week and noticed a plant near their house that looked a lot like Datura. So he went over to it, and sure enough, he saw the small, spiky pods growing near the bottom of the plant. He himself didn't want to try any because he always feared any sort of hallucinogen because of the risk of the bad trip, but I knew I wanted to try it for some time, so he picked some of the magical pods up, wrapped them up in cellophane, and brought them back to me. The bastard wouldn't even hand them over unless I paid him $20, but it was well worth it. I couldn't wait to try them. The first thing I did was find someone who could be a sitter for me, and that sitter was the most trustworthy friend I know. Let's call him Steve. I asked my mom if I could sleep over, and she said it was fine. So the next day, Steve came over around noon, and I got the seeds out of the pod and counted 37. I heard it only took like 10 or 15, and I wanted to have more so I could trip another time or sell them, so I decided to take 15. 0 minutes in, me and Steve went up to my room to take them. We put on some music, sat down in my beanbag chairs, and I was feeling confident that things were going to go smoothly, mostly because Steve was there with me. He was a very responsible person who I felt very safe and secure with. Of course, I had a little bit of butterflies in my stomach because I was taking something new, but it was mostly excitement, a total I can't wait feeling. As Steve and I talked, I decided it was time, and I pulled the sandwich baggie out of my pocket. I got out all the seeds, I put them into my palm, and I looked at them. A little teardrop-shaped things, darkish brown, almost black. I thought to myself, here goes nothing, and I licked my palm to get all the seeds on my tongue, chewed them up a bit, and swallowed. As they went down, I got this overwhelming feeling of finally. I have finally taken this crazy Datura, and in time, I will be experiencing it. All I could do now is relax, keep the best state of mind I possibly could, and wait for things to kick in. 30 minutes in, I went down to the kitchen with Steve to get a drink of water, and then went to the bathroom. No noticeable effects. Steve suggested we play video games while we wait for it to kick in. We went back to my room and played Mario Kart 64 and snacked on some Doritos. 50 minutes in, starting to feel different, a lot like when you need to stretch really bad, but in my whole body. My mouth is getting really dry, very similar to cotton mouth after smoking a thick blunt. Steve is winning the game and I'm losing my grip on my controller, and I can't seem to keep the A button pushed down. About after 10 minutes, I feel very different, very intense, and I'm wondering why Steve is in my room playing video games. He reminds me that he's sleeping over to watch me because I took Datura. Right after he says, this wave of shock and fear run down my body like goosebumps, for I completely had forgotten the reason why I was there, and that I had taken anything. Although I do recall it, I am, needless to say, in shock at what just happened with my brain. I look at Steve and say, calm me down, and somehow Steve knew exactly what to do. He just smiled at me with this reassuring smile and said, don't worry, man, you're gonna have a blast. This made me feel incredibly better, and my mood shifted after this. Things seemed to go back to normal, and I asked Steve to stop playing video games and go downstairs with me. We go downstairs into my kitchen, and I pull a full pitcher of cherry Kool-Aid from the fridge. Steve got 2 glasses, then went to my living room and sat down on the couch. I poured the both of us a glass, and we sip it while watching TV. After I finish my glass, I pick up the pitcher and gulp it down halfway. I am very thirsty, but the drink doesn't seem to quench my thirst at all. It seems to glide over the surface of my mouth, leaving it very dry still. And now I just try my best to ignore it and continue to watch TV. An hour and a half in, I tell Steve I'll be right back. I walk to the bathroom. While I piss, I look at a picture above the toilet. It's a cartoon of a polar bear lying on its back in the water, holding a wine glass like it fell asleep from being drunk. The concept makes me want to laugh. It seems like the dumbest cartoon in the world for me, and its location is just random as its contents. I think to myself, why the fuck do I have a picture of a polar bear in the bathroom? For some reason, this seems nearly hysterical to me. I walk out the bathroom and go back to the couch with Steve. As soon as I sit down, my mom walked out of the kitchen and tells us that she's going to work and to behave. She'll be back around 10. Steve and I say goodbye as she leaves. Perfect. Now we have the house to ourselves. 2 hours in, and nothing much seems to be happening. I've finished the pitcher of Kool-Aid and gone to the bathroom more than 2 times. Steve says to go to the kitchen and refill the pitcher with water in case I feel like I'm going to be dehydrated. It seems like a responsible idea, so I go into the kitchen and refill it with water and put ice cubes in it. I walk back into the living room to find Steve is left, and the TV's been turned off. The entire house is dead silent. Then I hear the TV go back on, but the screen is blank, and I hear Steve saying, "Hey, I'm over here." I realize he's calling me from out of my backyard, so I put on my shoes and go outside. At first, I scanned my backyard for him, but I couldn't see him, and I couldn't hear him anymore. I suddenly get the idea that Steve had come over for hide-and-seek game. At this point, I had absolutely no idea that I've taken anything, so I run into the yard looking around for him. Then I speak, come out, wherever you are." Right when I say this, my voice sounds very different, like a person who's gone totally insane. This starts to scare me very much, and Steve is nowhere to be found. I look across the other end of my yard, and my yard's only 100-foot by 200-foot area, but now it's the size of a soccer field. And on the other side, I see my dog's pen, a fenced-in area in the corner with all of my friends who are straight edge that stopped being friends with me when I started smoking pot. I haven't seen them in so long, so I run towards the pen. They just look as happy to see me as I am to see them, and they let me into the pen. We start talking, and to my surprise, one of them pulls out a blunt out of nowhere and sparks it. I am naturally amused, but shocked. Then they start to explain to me that they came to see me and that they got into this game, and that they don't think that drugs are bad at all. On the outside, I'm pleased to hear this, but on the inside, I begin to feel feelings of untrust. These bastards abandoned me years back. I don't show any unpleasant feelings on the outside, and I continue to be very cheery with them, although I keep a state of mind to not trust anyone there. They pass me the blunt, and I take a super long hit and hold it super long and blow out. After it went around a few times, we all spark a cigarette to increase our high. We're just talking, and it seems like time has stopped. How long can people just sit here and talk? It's been hours. I think to myself, strangely enough, I am still puffing on the same cigarette, but don't notice anything unusual about it. Then I drop my butt, and it falls under the chair that I'm sitting on. "Ah, shit," I said, and I got out of my seat to get it. I look under the chair, but I can't seem to find it. "Did any of you see my..." And I turn around, and I notice there's no one there, and I'm alone in the pen. A sense of danger comes over me, and I get intense feelings of I shouldn't have trusted them, and how dare they? These feelings are followed by loneliness and total fear. I need to get out of this pen and get back into the house. I begin to walk back to my house across this long field, and it seems like even longer to go back than when I had come. Next thing I know, I'm back in my kitchen, lying on the floor, very sweaty. Steve is there sitting on the kitchen counter. My focus is very blurred and very off, and I feel very confused about why he's there on the counter and I'm on the floor. But every few moments, I kind of snap back into reality and know exactly what's going on, then snap right back into delirium. And in that moment, I totally forget everything. Next thing I know, it's already 6:46 a.m. and I'm running late. My mom tells me that I only got a half an hour to get ready or I'll get Saturday detention. I scramble out of bed and run into the bathroom to take a shower. I suddenly realize how much of school's gonna suck because I forgot to do my homework and I have an oral presentation due that day. All of these thoughts make me panic, and I know there's no way out of it because I already skipped school 3 times this year and got caught, and I can't skip another day or I gotta go to court. Get out of the shower and dry off as quickly as I can. Then I run into my room to get dressed and go downstairs to the kitchen. Right then I noticed something was completely wrong. The clock said 1 a.m. and the calendar was on July. Nobody was up. My mom was asleep and had been asleep. She didn't wake me up for school. I didn't have school in the summer. I wished I was dreaming, and the thoughts in my mind were a brink of driving me insane. All I could remember was running back up to my room in total panic, ready to cry and scream that if one more weird thing happened, I was going to commit suicide. I woke up in my bed with Steve on the floor watching me. He looked very concerned and asked me if I was okay now. If I was still tripping, I didn't know what to say to him, because right then I could have been still tripping for all I know. It was 5 p.m. the next day. I had a bad headache and I couldn't focus on shit, and my body was just completely broken and uncomfortable. It took me a while to collect my thoughts, and I figured out I wasn't tripping anymore. And these series of very strange realistic dreams stuck in my mind from when I was asleep. But I can't for the life of me remember what they are now. I forgot them completely about 4 hours after I woke up. From Steve's point of view, in a nutshell, I started acting weird when I got water from the kitchen. He said that he was trying to talk to me, but I would just have this blank stare like I couldn't see him. And then ran outside into my shed in the backyard and started talking to myself. And after an hour or so, I ran out of the shed with this scared shitless look on my face and fell down. And I crawled back into the house. Then I crawled into the bathroom, he said. I was trying to drink out of the toilet, and he pulled me up and carried me into the kitchen, put me down on the floor, and got some ice for me. He said I was talking in my sleep, saying random words in no logical order whatsoever, but I was saying them fluently like I knew what I was talking about. Before my mom came home, he carried me upstairs and put me in bed and stayed up there to watch me. And he said I was talking out loud and moving around like I was having nightmares. And around midnight, I sprang out of bed and ran into the bathroom and got into the shower for an hour and went back into my room and put on a shirt backwards and boxers with no pants. Then I ran downstairs and stood in the kitchen for like 10 minutes, just standing there. He then said I freaked out and ran upstairs into my room, and he said that he had to push me into my bed and hold me down until I stopped moving and eventually fell asleep. Then he did. He woke up around 10 that day, and I slept till 5. To sum it up in one word, insanity. That's what it feels like if you start to snap out of it and realize what's happening. But then you just go back into this state of total confusion, and it's enough to drive anyone crazy. Overall, I'm glad I experienced this, just to know what it's like, but it is not for everyone, and I'm not saying the experience was at all pleasant. I have no motivation to do it again anytime soon. Maybe someday, years from now, for some crazy fun, but this Datura seems to be something not of this world. The hallucinations were accompanied by delirium and confusion, which made them seem real, and like it wasn't really tripping. This stuff is truly the devil's weed. Hello everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please let me know in the comments down below. I made this because the first trip report, the LSD trip report, did incredibly well. It has 500,000 views. Oh my god, I can't thank you guys enough for enjoying that. So many people said that they wanted a different substance to talk about and different stories to hear, so I'm here to oblige. If you guys have anything else you want to request, any specific history videos you want me to cover, any specific dark stories you want me to cover, any more drugs you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments down below. And also, because we're talking about drugs, there's going to be a lot of spam bots in the comments, so if you guys are getting that in your replies, if you see them, please report them, because that is just predatory. I don't want that here on my channel, and it's really difficult for me to do it because they come out of the woodwork, and I'm only one human. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.